All right, assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you for bearing with us. We will get started. So each presenter has 20 minutes to present, and then we will leave a 25-minute time at the end for a discussion. And if you have any questions that you'd like the panelists to answer, please go ahead and drop them in the chat below. And I will keep a track of that. And then inshallah near the end, we will get to that part of the conversation. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Madiha Tahseen. She is a research fellow, community educator, and a research and translation manager at the Family and Youth Institute. She received her Ph.D. in applied developmental psychology from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, where she is currently engaged in a mixed method research on the experience of American Muslim youth. She has presented her research nationally in academic and community settings. She has been a community organizer in various capacities for more than a decade.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome. I know this is an early Saturday morning, so I am excited to be here with everybody and just share some of the findings from our work. Inshallah, I will share my screen. Hopefully that looks good. Everybody can see my slide. Yes?
No.
We can't, nope.
Not yet.
There you go.
It's good.
There we go.
Oh,
Yep.
Perfect. You would think after all this time with Zooms, all of this past year, we'd figure it out. So Jazakallah khair. What I wanted to talk about today is really divorce in the American Muslim communities, a community-based approach to a struggle that's very, very stigmatized and taboo in our communities. I'll talk about sort of the FYI's role and how we approach this issue and what sort of resulted from our take on this project, inshallah, the lessons we've learned, and then I'll share some resources, inshallah. So to begin with, just to give you a little bit of a background about what we do, we now more than ever, there's so many issues that the American Muslim community is facing. There are a lot of challenges going on in our families. And as you all may see in your clinical practice or your academic experiences, a lot of times the needs of our community are met sort of very unprofessionally, with anecdotes and people kind of giving their stories without really solid research and a solid Islamic framework. That can be really problematic, especially for very taboo and stigmatized issues like marital conflict and divorce. So we really, at the FYI, for all of our issues across these 4 topic areas that you see on the screen, we use a very community engaged public health approach to improve Muslim American mental health and family well-being. And then we take that research and we make it accessible and adaptable to the community and their needs. So we do this with a public health model approach. So basically the public health model approach means that we sort of address mental health issues and we work to prevent them from happening in the first place or reducing sort of their impact and addressing them early enough. Whereas, and it has a far reaching impact, right? Addressing the entire population compared to the medical model, which works really an individual at a time and is really high cost. So we're working in a way using the public health model to really get to the core of the issue, try to prevent it, minimize impact, but then if it's serious, referring to, of course, clinical services and letting the clinical side of the field take over. So that's the approach that we applied to divorce, right? Many couples are experiencing marital conflict, and with the right resources, they don't necessarily have to go down the route of divorce. They can get the support that they need with just some resources and some guidance. And then of course, the ones who do need clinical service, and that's where that kind of comes into play. So how did we apply this? We use the following theory of change and logic model. Given that this is a very challenging issue, the solution is not simple either. It requires a much more thought out process. So the way we did this is with step 1 and step 2, we kind of identify the issues using research. We really invest a lot of layers of research so we can, understand the unique nuances, because everyone does not experience divorce the same way and everyone doesn't move through the process the same way. So I really wanted to understand at a very comprehensive level. And then using that information, we move into sort of solution seeking and resource development, which is what is a solution that's needed? what resources the community need, and how do we give it back to them. And then the final few steps are sort of about evaluation and impact. Did it work? Is it what was needed? Or is there something else that's out there that we need to address? So what did we do? For the first sort of 3 steps of identifying issues, research, and solution seeking, this is kind of what we engaged in. Just a big picture look of what we did. This is sort of what our needs assessment looked like. There's 3 components. The first was research. So this is both FYI sort of internal empirical research about marriage and divorce, primarily focused on marriage for reasons I'll talk about in a little bit, as well as what does the current literature show in the field about what marriage and divorce looks like, both in the American Muslim community, but in general as well. And then the second step was the experts. So the clinicians, imams, religious leaders, community leaders who have experience with this topic. We did qualitative interviews with them across the board, with including diversity, to make sure we're capturing the needs of the community. And getting their sort of on the ground experiences with what they're facing in the people that they work with. And then our final step was to use this information to create sort of an online survey and address, get the needs of the community. And what is the community saying? So this was an online survey that was disseminated to our audience. And so I'll talk through sort of findings of each of these steps and then what that resulted in. So in terms of research, this is just a quick listing of some of the research we've done. It's all very, very preliminary. There is a lot of research that's needed. When I say research, I mean like empirical studies on the experience of divorce among Muslim American communities. As far as my knowledge, there's very, very few research. Most of the research we've done is a lot about sort of marital conflict or pre-marriage prep and the importance of it. There, of course, needs to be a lot more. And so, we would love to partner with anybody if there's expertise in that area. But in addition to our research, we also went through all of the research that exists out there to understand what does this issue look like as far as we are able to tell, so that we can make sure our resources really address those issues as much as possible. The second step was the interviews. So these are the themes that came up as we coded our interviews with all of the individuals that we worked with. I think a lot of these themes seem very relevant and kind of make sense that this is what couples are probably facing. The first theme was a disconnect between scholars and couples that they work with or individuals that they work with. So a lot of the interviewees mentioned that, in their own search for this support in this process, they really were looking for real guidance from imams. But a lot of times imams wouldn't have knowledge on the issue, or they would get the token response of, just pray more and it'll be fine, just make dua and you'll be okay. So there's a real disconnect between the needs of couples, particularly the gendered need. So what women need and what men need who are experiencing this struggle, and how imams are guiding them. The second theme that was really prevalent was abuse, which is, of course, kind of expected, but sad to say. A lot of the interviewees talked about how, physical abuse does get more attention because it's more apparent and more visible, but people don't talk about the emotional abuse that happens a lot. It is not picked up and is really impactful for the couple. So there needs to be an emphasis on what does abuse look like, all the different forms, and how to kind of deal with it and cope from it even after. The third theme, as you can imagine, is lack of resources. So a lot of the interviewees mentioned there was just nowhere to turn people to. There was no guidance for people to provide. The couples themselves would talk about, because some of the people we interviewed were also not only experts in terms of clinically, but also had experienced divorce themselves. And so they talked about how there wasn't anywhere for them to turn to for culturally specific, religiously specific resources for them to access. And then there was another issue about accessibility in different mediums. So, sometimes things might have been geographically limited, right? So if it was a support group, it was a support group in a certain area that wasn't accessible to everybody. Or it was organizations that were, again, specific to one geographic location. So everybody did not have access to that. And then, of course, accessibility in terms of finances and income and what people could afford. A lot of these classes are extensive or they're expensive, and so they're just not accessible to everybody. The fourth theme was about insensitivity and ignorance. This is more at the individual level. So just people in your circles is what we kind of heard from interviewees. So individuals, for example, who project a lot of the internalized stigma that they have and hateful things to the people that they know in their communities who are going through divorce. So this is comments, this is being left out of social circles once you're divorced because you're, bad luck. And some of these are direct quotes that I'm talking about. So a lot of the interviews talked about how much really sort of serious emotional stress this caused for a lot of individuals who are experiencing very difficult divorce cases and needed that support. And then theme 5 is kind of connected to that, but it's more at the community sort of broader level. So this is, individuals experiencing stigma and shame from the community. So whether it's religious leaders, whether it's just bigger, even organizations or social circles, when they reached out for support, they experienced a lot of pushback through the process and didn't have really anybody to turn to. The next theme that we found was about children, as you can imagine. So if couples have children, what's the impact on children as they're kind of navigating this process? What are some solutions for divorced parents about co-parenting? What are some identifying emotional issues, things like that? And then custody and Islamic rights. And then the seventh theme was remarriage. So just what are the resources around what should, somebody who's getting remarried look for and deal with, and then somebody who's marrying somebody that's, a divorcee, how do you approach that and handle that situation? And the last one was just about finances and career, and this came up particularly for women. So how do you navigate financial rights and things like that throughout the process, but even after, and then how do you navigate career development, especially because financial abuse is really prevalent. So how do you navigate all of that? So those were sort of the high level themes that came out with our interviews with the clinicians. We used both this information as well as information from a review of the research to inform the survey that we created to assess from the community. So this survey was disseminated between October and December 2018. So this project has been a long ways in the making. We had about 387 American Muslims respond to the survey. Primarily, the audience is much younger, so they're all about 90% of them are under 50 years of age. Primarily females, so that's another limitation of our data, of course, that we have to keep in mind, which is a pretty common, unfortunate limitation of psychological research. Also, we had limitations when it comes to our sample size, so primarily Asians and Arabs. So definitely, please keep these limitations in mind as we talk about some of the findings. This is very sort of informal work. We need to address these limitations, I think, going forward. And when we talk about researching this issue much more empirically and from a large scale. So what did we find? 82% of the respondents said that they know someone who has gone through divorce and needs more resources to navigate the process. That's a huge number. Of course, if you ask somebody, most likely they're gonna tell you that they have this experience in their lives, right? This doesn't tell us anything about the divorce rate, of course, but the divorce rate right now, with the best research that's out there, we don't have as much of it. There's about 1 in 3 American Muslim couples get divorced. But what this number tells us is there are people who are either going through this experience themselves or know somebody in their lives. And so there's a lot of support that needs to be provided to really prevent a lot of undue harm that doesn't have to be there. Some of the other questions we asked was, what resources are you looking for? So we asked individuals to kind of either provide information about what resources would be helpful to either themselves or a loved one going through the process, and what those resources might look like. Again, remember, small sample size of men, so I'll talk about that in a second. 80% of respondents said that they wanted a better understanding of how to recognize an unhealthy relationship. So signs of like toxicity, specifically with this response. With the sample of males, again, small sample, we're talking about 83 males, but the majority of them, 95%, wanted more resources about abuse in a relationship. These are the males. So again, I know it's a small sample size, but that's still pretty telling about what's going on, even within males. Often we think about abuse and we always think about women, but the males are recognizing this as an issue too, either because they experience it themselves or, unfortunately are the perpetrators. But either way, abuse is an issue that needs recognition and support. 80% of respondents mentioned that they wanted more resources on how to help children through the divorce. So you might be noticing these a lot of the themes that came up in our interviews. So it kind of confirms what we were expecting to hear based from the clinicians and experts. 71% want help with coping after divorce. 59% said they were looking for more resources to help with the remarriage process, which again, we are expecting remarriage, but this is a little bit affirming. That's a pretty high number of individuals who are looking for those resources. 75% said that they wanted more resources about marriage prep after divorce. So meaning as they're prepping for marriage, what specifically are they looking for? And it's that part of it before the divorce, not necessarily after they've had that second marriage. So we use all of that information to come up with, sort of move into how do we serve the community? A lot of this information has told us what we need from both the research perspective, the clinicians, experts on the field, as well as the community themselves. So what do we do with this information? One of the biggest lessons we learned throughout all of that needs assessment that we did was we need to be able to have different mediums. People love to have information in different ways. Not everybody wants to read. Some people want to watch something. Not everybody accesses it at the same time or at the same stage of the process. So that was a really key one for us, was that there are individuals who are at different parts of the process and need resources throughout all those parts. And again, because we take a public health approach, for us, a lot of this needed to be preventive as well. So what we did is we approached this from the perspective that divorce is not a linear process. A lot of times, again, when you're in the beginning stages, you're just contemplating. There are different routes that you can take, whether it's reconciliation, whether it's, a peaceful separation, different things like that. So we wanted to make sure that that was addressed so that if people had resources when they were in that contemplation stage, they could access those resources and hopefully move towards reconciliation. And so that was kind of addressed. We addressed that through the different resources we created. So just quickly, as you see on the screen, we have the Divorce Toolkit that we created. There's the Divorce Infographic. We have a webinar, and then we created community-based articles. So I'll walk you through some of these just sort of very quickly, both as a resource for you guys to share with people in your circles, but just to kind of understand what's that sort of final step of using community-based research and adopting that kind of an approach. So the first resource we created was the Divorce Toolkit. It's really built as a guide, like I said, to help through the many stages of divorce. The way it's set up is, I don't know if you guys can see it on the screen, but the different sections of the different stages of divorce, like I said, so contemplating divorce, and even in contemplating divorce, if you're moving towards reconciliation, here's what things that you could do. How do you even know? What are the signs that you should be looking for to see if divorce is the next step or not? So there's a lot in there. Section 2 is in the midst of divorce, if you've already initiated the divorce process. Section 3 is after divorce, and so on. As you can see, there's all these other different stages there to really help individuals through the process. Within each stage, we have resources around the topics that you see on the left side. So within each section, within contemplating divorce, there's mental health, relationship with the partner, and issues related to children. So in the midst of divorce, again, we go through all of these resources. So if you're in section 3, which is after divorce, you're looking for coping. How do you heal from what you've just been through, right? You were in a relationship for the longest amount of time. How do you deal with self-healing and finding yourself again? How do you deal with if you're in an abusive relationship and now, there is danger as you're leaving an abusive relationship? How do you cope with that? How do you deal with co-parenting, especially if you have a toxic ex-partner, right? So all of the stages go through each of these core kind of topics. And so there's a lot of resources there for individuals to navigate through. And again, divorce isn't linear, right? So you could jump through different sections. You might be in the midst of divorce for one section, but then something happens and you kind of go back to section 1, which is now you're still kind of contemplating it, right? So again, the goal is really just to provide resources that help individuals even see, is this a serious situation? Do they need clinical help? The next thing we did is another medium. So we created a divorce infographic. Sorry, this is more of a marital conflict infographic, right? So this is intended for that stage of divorce where couples are struggling. And if they can try different strategies, they might be able to sort of heal or work on healing their relationship rather than going the divorce route. So it just kind of goes into what are the major reasons for marital conflict based on research, and then what are some strategies that they can use to work on their marriage and work on their relationship. And then we also conducted a webinar. The webinar brought together data from different organizations. So this was a much more intimate look at the issue, but from a national perspective. So we had ISPU present their data on what the trends look like in the Muslim American community. And then we had clinical experience by one of our own FYI speakers, Brother Rafael Mansour. So it was really impactful because it was that one-on-one conversation feel, kind of like how we're doing now. And it was really very, very impactful for the attendees. So talking about impactful, the last step of our process is really impact evaluation, right? So how do we know what's working well, and what do we improve on? So as you can kind of see, this is a very, very basic glance at the reach of our resources. So the Divorce Toolkit had a certain number of views. They're kind of all listed on there. What you'll notice, and this was even surprising to me, is that the divorce webinar had the biggest reach compared to some of our other resources. And I think that really shows that people are really looking, especially for this kind of a heavily stigmatized and really taboo sensitive topic, they're looking for that one-on-one, more intimate feel to a resource, and really hear the clinical side of what's going on and what are clinicians seeing in their experiences. So I hope that provided sort of an overview of what this process looks like. How do you engage the community in research, and then use that research to serve the community? I think one of our biggest lessons learned, particularly for this topic, was there are areas, because of our goal as a research and education organization, that we cannot address. So one of the biggest themes that you might remember came out from the interviews was the disconnect between religious scholars and like community leaders and individuals going through divorce or struggling with marital conflict. We don't do anything with Islamic, fiqh or anything like that. That's not our background. We're not scholars, but that's a huge gap that's very, very necessary. It's a theme that came up all the time. Even in the data that ISPU kind of worked with, one of their biggest findings was that Muslims are looking for community support. They're looking for support from the community, and it's not there. So that's one of the things that we are, as we're evaluating what we've done, realizing this is something we need to find a way to provide resources. Whether it's collaboration, whether it's launching certain resources, whatever it is, that's an area that really has there's a big gap out there, and it's impacting individuals, because oftentimes who's the first point of contact in our communities when somebody is struggling? They go to their imam, right? They go to some leader that they connect with in the community. And so if we don't address that, then that's a big gap that's there and can have lots of significant impacts. So inshallah, that's kind of one of our biggest lessons learned, but also next steps for us to kind of think about, but also us, the general American community, Muslim American communities, to think about. So inshallah, I will end there. The last thing I just wanted to show you was just to check out a lot of the resources on FYI's social media pages. If you're a clinician, there's a lot of resources here that you can just share with your clients, things that you can't really go into your session, or you just want them to look for additional information. And if you know anybody, if you're not a clinician, if you know anyone who's struggling, really, we've done the work for you. So just take advantage of it and share it with people in your lives, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. I really appreciate everybody joining this morning.
Thank you so much. So next up, we have Siti Patonah Mohamad. She is a PhD student at the University of Malaya. She has been interested in exploring the world of autism since 2012. She is involved with the training and teaching of students with disabilities such as autism and Down syndrome, especially in teaching them how to read the Quran. She started her Ph.D. in 2017 by looking at the well-being of Muslim parents and persons persons on the autism spectrum and their coping strategies, especially in religious coping.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Akila, for the introduction. Can you hear my voice?
Yep,
Okay,
we can hear your
thank
voice
you.
and see your presentation.
Okay, first I'm greeting from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and actually the time here is already 9:30 p.m. as we are 12 hours ahead of Michigan. So as introduced, my name is Siti Patonah, a PhD student from University of Malaya. This presentation is part of my PhD works guided by my supervisor, Prof. Dr. Mohamad alias Zulkifli, and Associate Prof. Dr. Duria Sharifah Hassan Adli from University of Malaya, and Dr. Karen Jennifer Golden from Monash University. So actually, I am honored to be selected for this presentation, especially this is the Autism Awareness Month, and my work is related to parenting of person on the autism spectrum, whom I will refer as PAS. The specific topic of the presentation is support through religiosity or spirituality, coping in Muslim parent of person on the autism spectrum in Malaysia, specifically in the central region of Peninsular Malaysia, including Kuala Lumpur, Selangor, and Putrajaya, and the southern region, a state called Negeri Sembilan. These areas were selected because they represented a high-risk area for mental health issue in Peninsular Malaysia. So autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, is a neurodevelopmental disorder, which means it disturbs the growth and development of the central nervous system, or CNS, especially the brain. It affects the brain functions, including emotions, learning ability, and self-control. Thus, it interrupts the individual developmental growth. The main feature for a person diagnosed with autism based on the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorder, or DSM-5, is deficit in social communication and interaction, such as lacking eye contact, dominance of non-verbal state, and absence of interest in others. They would prefer to be alone and sometimes have trouble understanding feeling of others. The person also show difficulty in making changes from one activity to another activity, hence demonstrating restricted interests or activities or repetitive behavior such as hand flipping. They also show uncommon reaction towards ordinary sound or taste or objects. I give an example. One of my autistic students could not focus if the fan is on. This was during a class that I held at Yayasan Faqih, a center at my university, which is involved in introducing Islamic teaching for students with disabilities such as autism, Down syndrome, and cerebral palsy. So I need to switch off the fan to enable this student to pay attention. So research on PAS are well established, especially on early intervention, so as to reduce the degree of these lifelong disabilities. With ASD is gaining more attention globally, others related to PAS, including parents, siblings, and teachers, are also being highlighted for various studies. Parents of PAS are reported to be very much affected with having such children in their life. These parents face a lot of struggles daily in order to meet the needs of their children and for themselves to have a life with quality. Parenting stress of this individual is said to be higher in comparison to parents of typical children or other children with disabilities such as Down syndrome. The sources of the stress are mostly related to the behavior of these children. For example, PAS are known to be hyperactive or show aggressive action like tantrum if they did not get what they want. And the other stressor is economic burden also become part of the parental stress. In Malaysia, a study has suggested parents need ringgit Malaysia 36,000, approximately USD 8,700 annually to support a PAS child, especially to cover the daily medical direct costs like therapies, etc. Parents also face stigmatization from the society, which still lack awareness or understanding about ASD. Currently in Malaysia, there is a special unit for PAS has been set up by the police. Unfortunately, there have been cases of PAS becoming victim of sexual harassment, but it lead to open discussion in the community. So all these stresses lead to deterioration of parents' well-being. So here I will share some example of critical aspects that determine their well-being. Parent of PAS have problem related to aspects like biological or physiological, psychological, social, and religious interaction struggle. Physiological or biological issue they face including having sleep problem due to the sleep difficulty of their children. They also report having weaker immune system. Psychologically, many studies have shown that parents of PAS have higher level of stress, which lead to anxiety and depression. They also face discrimination, which cause them to be isolated from society and having low esteem. In fact, some parents do not intend to join the activities of religious program by the community because they are afraid if they're present with the children will disturb the activity. They need to bring along the children because of difficulty in leaving their children at home. To overcome the struggle faced in raising PAS, Muslim parents, just like others parents, have tried various coping strategies to reduce their burden. The basis of Islam having traditional sources like Holy Quran, Hadith, and Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad SAW, and teaching of the alim to guide them in facing problem or struggle is a strong concept. Hence, Muslims are not only to understand or tadabbur the Quran, but also to practice the teachings. Some verses in Quran mention that children are also trial for parents. For example, verse 15 from Surah At-Taghabun, Innama amwalukum wa awladukum fitnah, wallahu indahu ajrun azim, which means your rich and your children are but a trial. As for Allah, with him is a great reward. Children, including of PAS, is a gift from Allah to each couple. The presence of PAS in a family is a trial to see if the parents are able to be responsible and carry out the parental duties with amanah. If they are able to take care of their children and be patient in raising them, then the reward from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will be theirs, and he has promised in the surah. Besides, Allah also said in the Quran that one will face only situation which corresponding to one's ability, as he mentioned in Surah Al-Baqarah, verse 286, La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha, laha ma kasabat wa 'alayha ma iktasabat. Allah does not obligate anyone beyond his capacity. For him is what he has earned, and on him what he has incurred. Even in Malaysia, many studies have looked at parental stress of PAS and coping strategy from Islamic perspective or include Muslim parents. This is the situation despite established acknowledgement that ideally Islamic values like concept like tawakkul and rida could lessen their stress. One case study suggested how parents of PAS can create resilience by deeply understanding the Islamic values and appreciating or feeling grateful, shukr, for events seemingly good or bad which happen in their life. This is a lack of systematic study done to show the relationship of spirituality effects on parents of PAS well-being. How do they practice the Islamic teaching? Do they spend many hours reading and understanding the Quran? Or how often do they frequent go to the mosque? So this gap need to be tackled, and this is a big focus of my study. So to combat the stress, it is important for an individual to implement the right coping strategy for a better result. There are many coping strategies mentioned in previous study like emotional and problem-focused strategies and etc. If a person is not able to manage her or his stress, then he or she will undergo exhaustion phase. From the literature, there are also of divorce cases and family problem reported in family of children with autism. In worst situation scenario, the result of negative coping might lead to this undesirable circumstance happening among parents of PAS. We have read in the news of a few cases of parents killing their autistic children. The suffering they face lead them to excessively afraid and worry about the future of the children, especially when they as parents are no longer around. So in my study, I employ a mixed method sequential explanatory design. The quantitative analysis part explains the condition of Muslim parents of PAS regarding their stress and quality of life in the survey sample. I use 3 scales like Autism Parental Stress Index, APSI, to identify parental stress, and World Health Organization Quality of Life Breath and SRPB to look at the parental quality of life and spirituality. I can conclude that spirituality plays an important part to bring out good parental well-being. The correlation analysis showed that the higher spirituality is associated with lower parental stress, while higher spirituality is associated with higher or better well-being. And the factor analysis of regression showed that from 8 facets of WHO quality of life for spirituality, religiosity, and personal belief scale, only facet 8, which is faith, was the only one predicted parental stress, and the only facet 6, which is inner peace, significantly predicted parents' well-being. So these 2 factors, faith and inner peace, are sufficiently enough, strong enough to for Muslims to hold on to achieve wellness or peacefulness of their mind. Accepting and having redha to his plan can lead Muslim parents to be in a ready mind state. So the data also show that parents were not limited to only being excessively worried, but were thinking and planning for the future of their children. Thus, in addition to making logical plans, this parent accepted Allah's plans and what he has determined and stay optimistic, having inner peace and following the guidance from Al-Quran. As he mentioned in verse 28 Surah Ar-Ra'd, الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَتَطْمَئِنُّ قُلُوبُكُمْ بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. The one who believe and their hearts are peaceful with the remembrance of Allah. Listen, the heart find peace only in the remembrance of Allah. The heart can find peace by doing good things like seeking help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through dua or prayer to Allah, reading the Quran, and giving sadaqah or charity. This action can avert parents from overthinking, which could affect their physical and mental health. As a Muslim scholar has said, if the nerve or sight gets sick, the body may also find no joy in life with the development of physical illness. So as conclusion for this short presentation, I can say spirituality coping is crucial for Muslim parents of PAS to maintain their well-being in order to have a balance in life. So how to go about in achieving this? By accepting and having strong faith in the teaching of Islam, ad-din, the way of life. So practicing the teaching will be a follow-up. This religious coping must be integrated with other strategies for a better outcome. So I hope this presentation will induce other researchers to look at this idea. Hopefully, the module of biopsychosocial spiritual coping will help parents to overcome their struggle. For those practitioners or NGOs, I really hope that they will include spiritual coping strategy in their practice on their clients. So that will be all from me. I would like to acknowledge the various parties that have assisted the study. First, the parents that were willing to be involved in the survey and agreed to be interviewed, and also the staff of the Autism Center for helping me with the distribution of the survey. Last but not least, I extend a warm welcome to all of you to visit Malaysia. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation. I will take you up on your offer and inshallah visit Malaysia one day. So last but certainly not least, we have our third presenter. We've got Raihana Nadra Alkaff. She is a community worker involved in MPAI, a nonprofit organization. MPAI mentors marginalized HIV and vulnerable children and women. She is a lecturer of Faculty of Health Sciences at the State Islamic University in Indonesia. She graduated with her Ph.D. from Tuku University and got her master's from University of Amsterdam.
Thank you, Akila. I would like to share my presentation. Can you see my PPT?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Raihana Nadra Alkaff. I'm from Indonesia. I work voluntarily as community worker at Masyarakat Peduli Anak Indonesia Foundation. I work as a lecturer in State Islamic University Syarif Hidayatullah Jakarta. I would like to present our research on mental health with title, Do Mothers Who Perceive Certain Difficulties Have Children with Worse Stress Levels? An online survey during pandemic COVID-19. And for the as the background, children have been influenced by the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemics in daily life due to changing in social life and learning methods. Several studies have shown an increase in symptoms of depression and anxiety in children and adolescents. Factors related to children's mental health cannot be separated from the patterns of parenting behaviors. Research on parental burnout has suggested that parents who experience burnout are more likely to engage in child abuse and neglect, placing children at risk for detrimental short and long-term outcomes. Greater high anxiety and depressive symptoms are associated with higher parental perceived stress. Thus, increasing perceived control may be promising intervention targets. Mothers who perceive certain difficulties and their evaluation on the stress symptoms of the children are very important to identify family resilience and solutions to the pandemic conditions. Research-based information is important to create a cultural friendly-based program intervention. Our study design for this study use an online cross-sectional approach. We use convenient sampling as the sampling technique of this study. This was done because on the basis of the ease with which researchers found research subjects that match the sample criteria. Data collection was carried out online by using a questionnaire in a Google Form platform, which accessed through links that we share via social media networks. Before filling out the online questionnaire, respondents were asked their willingness to voluntarily agree to participate in the study, indicated by the informed consent. The ethics of this research, approved by the Ethical Commission of Faculty Health Sciences Syarif Hidayatullah State Islamic University Jakarta. And for the limitation of this study, the condition of certain difficulties of family and child stress levels are mother perception and observation of the child, not a direct measurement. This study has two main results that I will discuss here. First result is more than 95% respondents do regularly praying and 35% participate in an online faith-based community. A brief of the characteristic of the respondents: majority of mothers aged over 35 years old, married, have middle or higher family income, and nearly 70% of respondents have children aged 7 to 11 years old. We did not ask them their religion in the questionnaire. However, it was estimated that in 2020, 87% of the Indonesian population are Muslim. There might be promising intervention method of coping stress by using religiosity dimension approach. A case study in Indonesia revealed that one of typology of Muslim community is semi-rational supportive, who believe that COVID-19 is substance created by God, and to avoid it by carrying out healthy lifestyles and getting close to the God. In Indonesia, there are available options of participation faith-based communities online through social media platforms such as listen the Islamic preaching and discuss the life problem between members, Majlis Taklim, Tarbiyah community, Pesantren online community, and also read Quran one day, one juz community, improve reading Quran like Tahsin Tahfiz community, and read Salawat certain times per day community. And online faith-based community is an opportunity to develop intervention that are integrated into the routine activities of specific congregation. The second result is greater perceived certain difficulties with higher are associated with higher stress level of children. 62.8 mothers perceive family difficulties during pandemics. The type of difficulties are economic, online learning, emotional, and combination of the three, and domestic violence. This study found that 55 children have stress symptoms such as decreased learning motivation, concentration problem, prone to anger, sleep disorder, increased dependency to family. Significantly, mothers who perceive certain difficulties have children with worse stress level compared to mothers who perceive having no difficulties. Though we did not explore the relationship between stress and physical abuse in children, several studies found a relationship between stress on parents and physical abuse in children. Our study results highlight that mental health of family, especially to mother and child, need to be addressed. Recently, study recommend an intervention on providing parental support and increasing perceived control as part of parental stress management. Social cognitive theory may be used as one of the approach to increase perceived control through self-efficacy concepts such as mastery experiences, social modeling, verbal persuasion, and physical and emotional states. And additionally, recognizing the characteristic of stress and early detection of the risk of depression are preventive measures that families can do. The majority of our research respondents are in Y generation or millennial group and X generation who have a better understanding of technology than the previous generation. This group has the potential to easily absorb technology-based education such as using mental health mobile apps, e-learning-based mental health literacy, has the potential to prevent family and child stress in addition to preventing other health problems. Finally, we can conclude that the greater certain difficulties are perceived, the higher stress level of children. This study suggests that particular construct of the social cognitive theory or SCT may use for creating an online cultural friendly based intervention program which applies to specific target congregation. Further studies are needed to develop a model of coping stress, use a cultural and religious approach based on the level of religiosity. Thank you very much. Salam Sehat, Mental Sehat from Indonesia. Let me introduce our NGO mascot. This is Alivia and Alif. We use Alivia and Alif as a role model for mental health children as well as other programs. Feel free to access our website. At this moment only in Bahasa, but this year we plan it to be bilingual. Thank you again and nice to have a virtual meet to all of you and may Allah give us the best. Thank you.
Amin, thank you so much. So we've got about 25 minutes for Q&A. If anybody would like to just go ahead and drop your questions in the chat box below, I'm sure the presenters would love to answer.
Okay, I guess, Assalamu alaikum. As we're waiting for the chat questions to come in or for people to kind of interject, I'll make a few comments. One is that, the reason why we use the term global health now instead of international health is that we're all part of a bigger global community. It's not just across nation states. And so we learn, I really appreciate, the contribution to, and we're able to do this because it's remote from, our colleagues and scholars and friends from Malaysia and Indonesia, because we're learning so much from your experiences there. One of the challenges when we have such a kind of global representation, and this happens in the abstract that was presented this morning from Indiana. And I've been to Indiana, so I know some of the context. Is that in Indiana, it's very much very white. If you're white and you're a brunette and not blonde, you're an outsider. So if you're a Muslim, you can imagine how that is. Now, I happen to know that social cultural context in Indiana. I don't know any of the social cultural context except for that Indonesia and Malaysia are Muslim majority country. I know Malaysia is quite diverse with Chinese, Malay, and so forth and so on. And so I think it's important for us, both from whatever country it is, or whatever region it is, because Indiana is certainly very different than New Haven or New York, for us to give us more kind of cultural context in terms of the experience. So, so as an example, I was wondering about like in the U.S., in terms of our experience with abuse and child abuse, is really criminalized, and so Muslims and minority groups underreport child abuse and even intimate partner violence, partly because they're afraid of losing their spouses, losing their children, children going to foster care. People being deported, and so there is a lot of underreporting of intimate partner violence. Of course, it's a very complicated topic, so there's many other factors as well. So I'm wondering, in the context of Indonesia, with child abuse and whatnot, what is kind of the background cultural context? Are people report or underreport, child abuse, so forth and so on? Is there a kind of extended family system or a system to support kids that are abused, or is it still a taboo topic? So those are my kind of beginning questions. For the FYI, for Madiha, and congratulations for all the excellent work you guys are doing. I really appreciate the impact assessment. One question I had is, Emma Kilawi, who you had a picture of, and you guys, and she led the ISPU divorce study. Her study, they recommended 19 interventions at a community level. And given that you guys have a public health approach, I'm wondering, are you guys thinking about, so that was they had kind of a false start where they said, okay, we want to intervene, we want to have these 19 interventions in different Muslim communities and get the imams to lead these interventions, and then go back and follow up if the interventions to prevent divorces and promote healthy marriages are going to work. Are you guys looking at circling back at that with ISPU and ML, or is that something that's kind of fallen on the wayside? So yeah, so those are my two questions for both groups. Give me some more social cultural context to your talks, as well as FYI's continuation with Emma's work.
I can go first if that's okay, because I think my answer is pretty straightforward. Yes, we are continuing the work that Emma did with ISPU in terms of those interventions. That's in the works. But one of the things we also have done, because of what we learned from her work, was the importance of pre-marriage education. So we actually are in the process of, where it's almost done. We created an online pre-marriage education course. So this is for couples. So we already have like community workshops where, communities can have us come out for couples, for individuals who are thinking of marriage, right? They're not necessarily talking to somebody, they're not in the courtship phase. The next goal, because of what we learned about the importance of pre-marriage education from Emil's work, was to create content on that next stage, which is if you're engaged or committed to somebody, so you're at that serious level of, your courtship period, what training exists there. So inshallah, if everything goes smoothly, it will launch officially broadly for everybody later this fall. We're going to be piloting it in the summer with some couples first. And it's an online course that you just move through on your own with, your partner. And it provides a lot of that premarital training and conversations you should having, assessing compatibility that we learned about from Emil's work.
Thank you. I will answer about the child child abuse. We are not our NGO not working with the directly to the child abuse, but we work with HIV children. And we also have the experience of child neglected in HIV children condition. So in certain situation that cultural, actually in Indonesia, we maybe it's the same like in Malaysia. We have like the very high culturally Islamic tradition culturally, that we if we are in the family, it's not only only the family who take care the child, but the whole family. It's not only the parents, I mean, but the whole family and also the neighbor. But in terms of HIV children, that will be a different condition. So in the condition culturally, if there is an abuse, child abuse in the neighborhood, everybody will speak. But in terms of HIV, maybe it will be different. But in Indonesia, since 2004, we have the law for the domestic violence, and also in the 2012, we have also law for the child protection. So actually we have the law, but in the implementation, in the reality, in the community, we still have faced the problems of the child abuse, especially also for the worker, children worker, we still have that problem, and also others like worker in the woman worker, also child woman worker is also, we have some case of the child abuse. Is it answer? What is the
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, I just wanted to kind of strongly encourage you that when you write this up in your manuscript, assuming that you're going to publish this in an international journal as opposed to a local journal, to provide more of that social cultural background in both your background section and your introduction section, as well as your discussion section, because your peer reviewers are going to be very interested in the cultural context of what's happening locally in Indonesia. And that's just general advice for everybody. As they're writing about Muslims, whether it's in Indiana or Jakarta or wherever it is, providing that culture context is very important.
Yes,
I
thank
just-
you. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to piggyback on say I 100% agree about that context piece of it. I used to do some autism work before my time with the FYI, and the center that I was at, they were interested in exploring autism services in Saudi Arabia, and they had to create an entire team and work with colleagues there because they couldn't understand the cultural context at all and didn't know how to navigate it whatsoever in terms of understanding the problem and delivering the services. So it's such a key point. I'm really glad that you brought that up.
So we've got one question here. How does one acquire the toolkit from FYI for the use of clients?
I had commented in the chat box, so you just go to our website. It's right there. If you go to www.thefyi.org, you can click on education in the top right and click toolkits, and they're all right there, all the different kinds. But I also put the direct link in the chat box as well.
Thank you so much. I'll share that link again. It might have gotten lost up there.
Yep.
I've got another question for Dr. Raihana. Can you explain again the relationship between perception of mothers and children about the problems related to COVID-19?
Okay. Our result found that a greater perceive certain difficulties of mother are associated with higher stress level of children. However, we also found that the type of difficulties are economic online learning, because of the online learning, it's not stressed by it's not affect to the children only, but also to the mother, because we need to be also as a mother, also a worker, and also a teacher in the house during the pandemic. So it make it revealed that it become difficulties to the mothers. And also the emotional, and also we also found domestic violence as perceived difficulties to the mothers. And also for the stress level of the stress children, the symptom that we found that it's decreasing learning motivation, concentration problem, prone to anger, sleep disorder, and increased dependency to family. So it, because of the this situation, that's we also found that mothers who perceive certain difficulties have children with worse level of worse stress compared to mothers who perceive having no difficulties. So that's we have a lot of limitation in this study, but we try to have to better understanding for what happened in the context of pandemic with mothers and children, and also the family. And that's because our study is also one of our methods, like a need assessment for our program. So we can conduct the next program for in our NGO with creating the solution by creating maybe a model for a model how to family coping. And actually we already started for the last 3 months. We made some online coping, online family coping for stress, and we invite ustazah, and also we invite the psychology and the expert to discuss about the family. And also we create some events like writing, storytelling, and coloring for children. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's see, while we wait for some more questions to come in, I have a question. I really liked your guys' use of the characters Alif and Alifa. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit more about that and how that has actually have you guys found it useful for the children? Have they reacted well to that? And if so, what is kind of the context behind that?
Actually, we start to use, we introduced the Alif Alifia during the pandemics. So we also made that, we plan to make like a book, like a online story for the children for this Alif Alifia. And actually we make like a competition last December to the family and also to the children to make a story, and the winner will be the one who made the story. And also we are already prepare from our volunteer also made some story about Alif Alifia have friend with the HIV children, because our in our NGO is also specific target for HIV children and the family. So we used Alif Alifia, but it's still ongoing process. So we will process the program for the Alif Alifia for the next program. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have one question.
Yeah, of course.
I have question with Dr. Madiha. You mentioned about the resources that they need. What can you elaborate? What kind of resources that the target that they need? What kind of resources that you mentioned a lot of resources. What kind of resources that they need?
Do you mean the topics of what they're looking for, or the actual kind of resource? So if it's a toolkit or if it's a video?
Yeah. I mean that the topic what they need, the resources what they need to help them to for the divorce family.
So in a short answer, everything. They want topics on all of this, they're looking for resources. One, how to just navigate the process from like a legal perspective, from an Islamic rights perspective. One, a big part of it, of course, is mental health. So coping, how do you heal through the process? How do you navigate what you're going through in terms of, if your relationship is ending, the struggles you're facing in your relationship, how do you heal from all of that? And kind of how do you deal with the new normal in your relation, like in your life after a divorce? All of everything that you can think about when it comes to healing from an abusive relationship and just abuse in general, identifying abuse, what does it look like, all the different forms, you know, what to do if you decide to move on from that abuse, how to do that safely in a way that's protected, how do you heal from that, you know, all of that, the effects of it on children. So for children, it's more, again, everything. So when it comes to having to co-parent with just in general, like even if the person, your ex-partner is not toxic, or behaves negatively, even just in general, how do you co-parent in a healthy way? How do you think about what your home is going to look like now? What impact has conflict between you and your partner during your relationship and after has it had on children? And how do you deal with that as a parent? How do you talk to children about divorce? How do you help them understand it, move through it, all of it, everything related to children. They asked for resources on the finances part of it. So for women, a lot of it was about financial literacy, right? Understanding the rights, but also understanding the whole legal aspect of it and moving through it. There was also remarriage. So what do people need to think about if they're now thinking about a second marriage, you know, after the first one breaks, and how do you deal with somebody that's a divorcee, and is there anything unique you need to think about, you know, like all those kinds of topics and conversations. If you go to our Divorce Toolkit, we've actually got the whole, basically a lot of what I presented today, the needs assessment and the findings from the resource, like what people are looking for, the topics, the resources are on the toolkit. So if you just go to fyi.org and the Divorce Toolkit, it's there. And I can put that specific toolkit in, I thought I did, but I'll put it again.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Do you find also, actually, our assume that during the pandemic there is an increasing of divorce, this divorce rate. What do you think about that?
There is. It's a correct assumption. There is an increase in the divorce rate. I'm not saying Muslims specifically, just the general population. There has been a significant increase because, as you can imagine, everybody was stuck at home. So issues that people had in the past, you might have been able to escape from them, right, to work or to school or XYZ social circles. But now we didn't have that escapism route available. And so everything got exacerbated. So there definitely is an increase in divorce and abuse in families. Everything just got exacerbated.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all the panelists. We've got about 5 more minutes, probably to answer one more question if anybody's got it.
Can I just ask Dr. Raihana? Is it possible for me to just ask her a question?
Yes, of course, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Raihana, as a follow-up to my question about the perception of the mother and the kids towards the problem that they are facing, your studies seem to show that kids are more affected when the mother, at least in your study, shows that when the mother perceives that she's having difficulties also. Does it mean that in that family, the dynamic is such that the mother shared her concerns with the children and that kind of caused additional stress to the children? Are you then suggesting that in such pandemic, in such a situation that we have now, parents should try to keep some of those concerns, some of those worries they have to themselves, or make it less serious with the children? Is that what is the take-home point here?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Actually, we did not in our study we did not explore much about the condition of the mother or the child, but we just asked them whether the mother perceive the difficulties of the family, and we also asked the mother observation evaluation about the condition of children. So we did not, we cannot say that our result because of that, because we need to explore more. But in our study, we just we can say that there is a significantly relationship between mother perceived difficulties with the children's stress, but we cannot say from our study that is it how the mother the relationship between mother and children, how they expose the difficulties to the children or not. We didn't ask about that, but we did ask how the family. We don't show in this presentation, but actually we in our questionnaire we asked also about the how the family cope the stress, how the family cope for the pandemic condition. So in that situation, there are a lot of activities that the family do, but we need to analyze more about our result. So it's not yet explored. Sorry, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. Looks like we could do one more question. If anybody's got one more question, feel free to just hop on if you'd like to ask.
Actually, I forgot to introduce one of my team is here is Dita, Miss Dr. Dita. If you want to add more, please. You can explain it.
Yeah, I think it's enough. We not finished all of the analysis for our data. So as Dr. Raihana mentioned that we have more data about how mothers and family handle the stress for the children, like for the activities and another, but we not finished yet about that. So in this presentation, we just select some data about the mothers and children, but not all the data. I mean that not all data analyzed about children and also for the mothers. So thank you for the input and the question, and I think we can explore more because we plan to publish this research and this result. So thank you very much for your for all the questions.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. We have now a 15-minute break coming up, inshallah, in which I will be getting breakfast, and it looks like the Malaysian team will be going to bed. But thank you so much for your time. Inshallah, we will see you in about 15 minutes. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.